Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marian West, Janice Fryatt, and their guests. Please use your own discretion in research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts, Marian and Janice.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I'm Janice Fryatt, and today I'm excited to be chatting with Nicole Beanfang, who is a member of The Transition, an organization that unifies social change makers from all over the world and helps them become more effective in the work they do. The Transition website offers tools and information to anyone interested in social change and alternative living. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be on the Sustainable Living Podcast, and I'm really excited to spend this time with you and your listeners.
Well, I'm very excited to have you. Before we got going, you were telling me a little bit about your journey of what led you here. Could you share that a little bit more about it with the audience? What led you to do what you do now?
Well, I think my entire life has kind of led me up to this point, but a critical turning point was when I first fell severely ill in 2010. Leading up to that time, I had been recently laid off. My identity was stolen. I ended up being unemployed for, almost a year before I decided to start my own business. And I brushed off this feeling that I wasn't feeling well to be a pre-existing condition I already had. I just thought the stress of everything was kind of exacerbating things. That ended up not being the case. Things got so bad I eventually lost my business. I lost my apartment and ended up couch hopping from friends, to family, etc. And during that time, I could barely walk, so I spent a lot of time learning about online business and marketing since my background is high-end sales and marketing. And during the day, I beefed up my business education so I could stay current, so when I, was well again, I could be employable. And at night, I would watch documentaries just to kind of blow some steam. And I had this whole big list of documentaries I ran across, all over the internet, and I wanted to watch. And one of those had a thumbnail on YouTube of an Ethiopian child with a swollen stomach. And mind you, I was in not a good mindset, right? Yeah. So I was like, whatever this is, I have to be in a really positive mood to watch it because it's probably going to make me even more depressed than I already am. So I watched that documentary and I found out that there were tons of other people like me that thought like me, that the system was messed up and that things weren't really benefiting humankind or the planet in general and that things needed to change.
Do you mind sharing what the name of that documentary was?
It was Zeitgeist Addendum. Okay. So the third in the Zeitgeist series, yeah.
Okay. And go. I mean, it's just so interesting because some of what you're saying has been echoed by people I've already interviewed within this series of new systems, and even the movie Zeitgeist Addendum has been cited before. So,
yeah, I've heard that through some of your other talks that I've listened to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what happened then after you realized that there were all these other people that thought the way that you do?
Well, I really tapped into digesting all the information on, Zeitgeist and found out that Zeitgeist was a spinoff of another organization. And so I read everything on the websites. I watched every video that they linked off to, went to every organization or other group that they linked off to, and really digested all that information before I thought I could take a stance of how I was going to move forward. And from that point, I felt I was properly educated enough, knew where things were going, that I would write the Venus Project, because that's where the Zeitgeist movement had come off of. And I felt more aligned with the Venus Project versus the Zeitgeist movement. It seemed more proactive and positive. I don't know, I kind of got the vibe that the Zeitgeist movement kind of had a like destructive slant to it, kind of aberrant behavior. That was just my original, view of it from everything that I had looked at and then the people even that I had talked to. And so I decided to write the Venus Project and offer my marketing skills.
And before we continue down that road, would you share a little bit briefly what the Venus Project is?
Sure. The Venus Project is an organization that was founded by a man named Jacques Fresco. He has been doing his work for over 70 plus years. He proposes that we can create a society that lives off of a system called a resource-based economy, which basically inventories all the Earth's resources, and then computers kind of allocate where those resources go. So it takes out the human emotion of what kind of causes a lot of the problems that we have today. And then he's known for his circular city models, which is a more effective way of transportation and just to map out a city. So people know him for his circular cities as well.
Okay. Yeah. And so you wrote to them offering to provide your marketing skills.
Right. And I didn't know how much I could be of assistance, but based off of my background, I had seen a lot of things that could be improved on the website to get more awareness and help their supporters be more effective in doing the work that they do. And so right away I was my email was forwarded to Roxanne Meadows, and I talked with her directly. And her and I were talking on a regular basis, and she was connecting me to the main volunteers that have been long withstanding with the organization, and I was getting tapped into the things that they were working on and that they were actually redeveloping the website at that time. And I just kept getting passed off from one person to the other that I got deeper and deeper into like the internal organization as a whole. And then I was also attending their weekly Sunday seminars, and so I was getting to meet their supporter base that way. And being part of the community. And at some point on one of those Sunday seminars, they said that they were looking for a marketing coordinator. And I was still talking to Roxanne on a regular basis. And I said, well, that's my background, and I don't know who else you have that's interested, but I want to put my hat in the ring. And pretty much the minute I said that, she said, I don't need to look anywhere else. You've got the position. And so from that point, I learned that people had already tried to have a marketing team. And so I was given a bunch of people from that original team, many of which didn't actually have marketing skills. They were just really excited supporters. And so I was teaching marketing and trying to run a marketing team at the same time, which I highly don't advocate ever to do. So things progressed, but unfortunately, things got really messy. People that had joined the team had misrepresented themselves of having skills that they didn't and were trying to be destructive within the team setting. There was just internal drama within the organization. And ultimately, I saw that the supporter base's needs weren't being met and not listened to. People were being ignored. And with all the agitation and frustration, it was affecting my health, which I was sick. I really had no business trying to do what I was doing with that much pressure when I already was as ill as I was. But I was trying to not be lost in my own pity party of being sick. I'm not saying that the Venus Project is a bad organization. I think they've definitely set the benchmark of where we will want to go. But I think that there's a path to get there, and the path to get there hasn't been well established, and that's something that the supporter base has desperately been begging for. And they don't want just general blanketed answers. They want like detailed step-by-step, hold my hand through the process. And that's why the transition came to be.
Okay, so did you end up leaving the Venus Project, I assume?
I did. I stepped down from the position. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so then you started putting your efforts into the transition?
Well, I started working together more closely with Michael E.V. Knight because I had already been a member of the Build a Hybrid RBE Community Now Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And when I was with the Venus Project, I couldn't affiliate myself closely with them because the Venus Project does not advocate intentional community living. They think it's a patchwork measure, that it'll never lead to a resource-based economy. And so I couldn't, having that official role as a marketing coordinator, I couldn't affiliate myself with such a thing because it went against the organization. Okay. So once I stepped down, I'm like, oh, now I can, talk to whoever I want and do what I feel in my heart is the right thing to do. And from talking to the supporter base with the Venus Project and within the Facebook group, you discover things, especially if you have a marketing background, you start to crunch all this data. And the data was showing me that people that are supporters of this type of thing tend to fall in one or multiple categories. And that's they're unemployed, they're underemployed, they're young families, they're people dealing with chronic illness, they're people dealing with taking care of people with chronic illness, disease, or dying parents, and they have children with special needs. So these are really people that are in oppressed situations. They're struggling to get by. They don't have a lot of resources, and for some of them, losing $100, losing $500, losing what to some people might think is small could be life-changing for them. It's the difference between being homeless and not, feeding your kids and not. And so I really felt that it was important to meet these people and their needs, because once you did, they're powerhouses. They're full of energy. They're enthusiastic. They want people to see that this is the direction we need to be moving in. And that's not anything to be sneezed at when you've got people so, highly motivated and are doing things even when it's hurting them, because they're in this bad way, and they really should be focusing on paying the rent and making sure that there's something on the table at dinner. Mm-hmm. And that simply wasn't happening with, the other organization I was with. And so with Michael E.V. Knight and I, we started to talk, and we started to find a way to organize the Facebook page, and as best as you can organize a Facebook page. And from that point, we realized, even though we did some things, like there's a pin document that kind of outlines the expectations of people being in the group, and we created a flag folder for people to, put a bio of themselves and what they're looking to do under their state or their country. It became really clear we needed to create our own website. And from there, I kind of found the most active, passionate people in the Facebook group. And then from there, we got our original founding team, and we started to develop what the layout of the website was going to be and what people were saying they needed and what kind of material needed to be on there. And it kind of just snowballed from there.
Well, okay. That's, wow. Quite a story. And I think it's a story that a lot of people can relate to. It completely makes sense to me that the people that are interested in this kind of thing are those people that have fallen through the cracks in our current system, that the system does not meet their needs. And let's be honest, I would say that that's probably in some way, shape, or form the majority of the people out there. Maybe they're not one paycheck away from homelessness, though I think a case could be made for that the majority of people in this country are in that situation.
Yeah, if you remove credit cards, I'm sure a lot more would fall under that situation.
Exactly, yeah. But even so, even those who aren't quite there, they've probably got somebody who's got special needs, or they're like me, trying to find a way to take care of my mom in her older years. Or there's so many ways that we are suffering because we don't have the community that we used to have before all this industrialization happened. It's wonderful to see that you've zeroed in, and really you're making an effort not to, to meet the needs of these particular folks. But getting back to the transition. So when you decided to create a website, you wanted to do something because the Facebook page was just not enough. Even though, just want to mention to everybody that Facebook page, you've got like 9,000 likes for that page, right? There's a lot of people that are really involved and interested in it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a lot of people, but just like other Facebook groups, I mean, those people belong to other groups as well. And if you want to do something with that people power, you have to give them a direction to go in. And so pretty much the Facebook group has kind of been acting as a collection source of like information, and we have told the users of it that we are going to mine that for data and information to put on the website. But we kind of had the understanding that this was going to be used as a virtual waiting room until the website was launched. So now is the time for everyone to start migrating over to the actual website that we built specifically for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're using the website as a way to really, work more directly with people and organize them or help them to organize to be able to do the things that they want to do along the lines of creating a resource-based economy.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is the transition's an umbrella organization, right? This isn't the Super Bowl where we're asking people to pick a team. Are you Zeitgeist, or are you Venus Project, or are you 4-Hour Work Week, or are you the Tiny House Movement? We want to support all of those people and those groups because they're moving in the same direction. And so our job as an organization is to support them in doing whatever they're doing, and for them to be autonomous and do what they're passionate about, but to kind of operate off of the same roadmap. Because something that we've kept running into as an organization is there's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of people doing things that overlap each other. And there's a thing that I've coined to be unintentional sabotage. So it's these people that have the same end goal, but they keep doing things that sabotage the other groups that also have that end goal. And it's because they're grossly unaware that they exist or what they're doing or, anything. And so we wanted to create a place, a hub for all of these people to go to be informed, because a lot of the people that I talk to one-on-one, they go, I'm struggling. I work odd jobs. I don't even have a full-time job. I'm trying to figure out how to feed my 2 kids. I'm a single parent, and it seems like nobody else is doing anything. Well, I'm the only one that cares about this. And the thing is, they're not, but they don't know who else is doing stuff. And so we wanted there to be a place for there to be a calendar so people can see, what's going on and who's doing what. And a big thing that I've run into multiple times, you see it in your feed probably too all the time, is there's multiple groups that you know of that maybe don't know of each other, and they all run a crowdfunding campaign at the same time. They're hitting up the same people, asking for, similar amounts of dollars, and by the end of their campaign, they wonder why none of them hit their goal. Well, it's because you're hitting the same demographic of people, and they're poor. How could you possibly reach that goal? And when you look at them, like one time I remember there being 6 going on at the same time, and 4 of them were doing almost virtually the same thing but in different locations, and 2 of them were close enough they could have actually done a joint campaign and probably actually reached their goal had they known of each other's existence.
Wow, I just wonder how many efforts there are out there, and in every kind of topic that this is happening, this unintentional sabotage is happening, because again, we're so isolated in our own little silos. We aren't connected. We don't know what other people are doing. Kudos to you guys for creating a place where people can begin to be informed about that. Makes a lot of sense.
And I can't remember who said the quote, but there's a quote out there that says something like, the peacekeepers need to be as well organized as those that oppress us. And until we get smart enough to make that happen, all these situations that we say that we hate and that we want to stop are going to be perpetuated by it. Mm-hmm. And another thing we run into as an organization is we run into other groups and organizations that are doing similar things. And we're like, let's collaborate, let's work together. And they go, no, we want our group to be known for being like the savior of the human race.
Yeah. And while they're trying so hard to get their group to be known, the human race is going down the toilet.
Right. So, there won't be a human race to save if you keep operating with that mindset.
Right. So it's a very ego-driven mindset that really doesn't serve us, when we focus on what we all want to do together, making that happen, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Making what we want to have happen is really what matters. So,
yeah.
So getting back to this, where did you come up with the name The Transition? I got to say, it reminds me of another topic I'm really interested in, which is transition towns. Are you familiar with them?
Yes, I am familiar. And it's funny because we didn't name ourselves to have anything to do with them or to copy the transition U.S. network at all. It had nothing to do with that. The reason we use the transition is because within the RBE movement, whether it's Zeitgeist or the Venus Project, people kept talking about, and they kept coming to the marketing team specifically saying, Jacques talks about the transition. What does that look like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? How do we get there? What are the steps? Show me the way. And like I said, the organization wasn't meeting that need. We weren't defining that specifically for them. Okay. And so literally we took it from the supporters' vernacular and said, this is the transition. Okay. This is how we get from the here and now to the ideal that we're all after.
Yeah. However, it is interesting. There are very, very many similarities between the transition towns movement and what you're trying to do. So I think that's interesting.
And that's true. And there's lots of people within our organization that come from the transition network and that are doing that in their communities. And then also we share information of the transition U.S. network to our supporters as well, because they're, like I said, part of what we're doing. We're not asking people to pick a football team. We're asking them to be engaged and involved and more effective in the work that they do. And so it's both ways.
Yeah.
In the future, I think it would be great for our two organizations to work together, and I definitely think that's a possibility. I definitely have contacts within the organization, both for US and the UK, mm-hmm. but we're not there yet. And I think there needs to come a point where we see that it makes most sense to both of our organizations. And then you got to figure out how it happens.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, to be clear, from my understanding, the transition network is about transitioning from our oil-based kind of economy to something else, something that isn't oil-based. And what you're talking about is transitioning to a resource-based economy, which again it's very similar.
Yeah, I think that the main difference between the organization I'm with, and the transition network and transition towns is they're focused on that one aspect of moving away from oil, because we could end up with chaos unless we come up with a good plan to go from that. But our thing is that's just one aspect of what needs to change. People's mindsets need to change. We look at what's going on in the news: racism, ageism, sexism. All these other isms we carry with us. That's just one tiny aspect too. There's so many things. There's technological unemployment and all these other things going on, and we kind of look at everything from a holistic approach and are giving people the skills and expertise that they need to be comfortable with those kinds of shifts, because it's happening. Mm-hmm. You see it happening anyway. Mm-hmm. The question is whether or not you're prepared for it and whether or not it's going to impact your life in a really significant way that could be detrimental, or are you going to take the necessary steps now to prevent detrimental things from happening to you and your family and those you care most about.
Yeah, and I love that. I just love that, because to me it's really been shown to me over and over again that that's the answer. The answer lies in our own individual hands, to take our own power back and find our own ways to create self-sufficiency and create a more harmonious life that honors Mother Earth. So many of us, and I don't mean to put anyone down, but in the past, the focus has been very top-down. It's all about creating legislation and protesting and going through legal channels, when there's so much that can be done when we individually, look at what we can do. So I commend you. It sounds to me like that's what you're trying to do, is really empower the individuals who are seeking these answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of my background too is network marketing. And one of the best things I learned from network marketing is to work smarter, not harder. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about protests and changing legislation, that's really hard work. Mm-hmm. And it takes decades. We have it in our history books from generations gone by. Let's work smarter. Michael E.V. Knight talked about it during his interview with you. Mm-hmm. Stop buying from them.
Yes.
You vote with your feet.
Yes.
Stop putting your feet into their store. Yeah. Stop supporting businesses that don't align with your personal values.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you
they move in the direction that you want. I mean, do you see it with these fast food chains now? They're mm-hmm. starting to have this really fresh and more upscale look to them. They're having smoothies on their menu now. Mm-hmm. They will change themselves because they still want to make money. And if they don't, they die and go by way of the dinosaurs.
So true.
But that's their choice. Yeah. But you have to mold them to the way that you want them.
Yeah, you do. And until we do take our power, they will continue to push us as far as they can, because their bottom line is not our best interest. It really isn't. Bottom line is the bottom line. It's about profits. That's the way the system works. And if, feeding people inferior foods that are laced with poisons increases your bottom line, then that's what many of these corporations have chosen to do. So true. Until we start to stand up and go, hey, I you know what? I don't think I'm going to buy this today. I think I'm going to maybe I'll grow my own garden and grow my own food. And then I don't have to worry mm-hmm. about what's in this stuff. So yeah, I think there's awakening happening. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to that fact that they do have a lot more power than they thought. But of course, with the help of people like you and you and Michael E.V. Knight, educating and showing people and giving them options. So getting back to what the transition does. Mm-hmm. Could you share a little bit about the most important aspects of your mission and your charter?
Sure. So our mission, literally taken from the website, is we unite people who are willing to take action towards enhancing and protecting all life and our environment for future generations. Our purpose is to construct real solutions by providing the support, space, and resources to do so via our collective knowledge and common heritage of the Earth's resources.
Okay. So with that in mind, how do you do that?
So something that we haven't been doing as activists, and as I've already mentioned in some of this interview already, is we haven't been taking an inventory of what we have collectively as these people of like mind, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what you've got, how do you know how to move forward with whatever it is you've got? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So on our website, the most important page on the entire website is the page called Your Action Plan. And it has phases. And we've only developed 4 phases thus far because by the time we're ready for, by the time there's market penetration in the 3rd and 4th phase, that's a marketing term from my background, mm-hmm. The world could be completely different. So we're not going to develop, 5 through however many phases until we know what that world is like. And then by that time, we'll have more experts that will have to deal with those specific issues that we'll be addressing at that time. So a little background about the Your Action Plan. It was originally drafted as a document called Our Plan, made in a Google document with our original core team that we had on the transition team. And that took our team about a year to develop. That was our first priority, the first thing we ever did. And we interviewed people, experts in their fields, who had no less than 30 years experience. And those people had experience in grassroots organizing, living and working in intentional community, starting and maintaining co-op businesses, conflict resolution, nonviolent communication, the list goes on. And we took time to pick at their brains and say, what is the most important things that you've learned from your work? What are the things people keep messing up and repeating over and over, wasting time? What are these things that people need to know from the get-go when they come to this conclusion that things are wrong and we need to start making a better way? And that became the Our Plan document, which now is your action plan, and which will forever be a living and breathing document, because as we learn and gain new information, we will add it to the Your Action Plan document. So that literally gives you step-by-step things to do within each phase that as you do it, you check it off. And the first thing in phase 0 is just to make sure that you're on the same page, with what we're doing. And then by phase 1, you start to enter in information and access of what you have. So do you have an extra room that you could spare? Do you have power tools that you could loan? Do you have skills that you can share with other people, whether they're life skills or fun skills? Maybe you do mosaics, or maybe you know how to knit hats, winter hats, whatever it is. And so now we have all that inventoried, and now we know what we have available to us. So when someone comes to the transition and they go, look, I just lost my job and they gave me an eviction notice and I need someplace to live within the next 30 days, we can go, okay, where do you live? And then we can look it up and we can find out who in the area has a resource for them.
Wow. That's huge. That is really huge. And
we can do the same thing for food. We have a page for food of where can you dumpster dive, for freegans? Where are there potlucks going on? Where are there free samples at the grocery store? Because you need to know about those resources when you're down on your luck.
Yep.
And you don't necessarily have someone within your own personal network.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're lifting each other up. Giving each other the knowledge that's trapped in our head in a place that's tangible.
Wow. I have to say, to me, that's kind of impressive that someone could go to your website and get information that could really help to sustain them from day to day. And they can do it right now. All these things are things they can do now. They don't have to wait. That's impressive.
But the other thing to keep in mind, too, is that the transition is a reciprocal organization, meaning that if you're participating in the transition, you are not supposed to act with a parasitic mentality of what can I get and how much can I take advantage of this thing. You are expected to give back, too. And that's why you're able to take out. And one of the things that we tell our supporters that we're based off of is the story of stone soup. I don't know if you ever heard that story when you were a little kid.
I think I did, but would you refresh my memory?
Sure, I'll give you my rendition of it, because it's different in all different countries. They tell it all different ways. So during a time of scarcity, there were travelers going through a village, and one carried a large cast iron pot on their back, the other a large wooden spoon, and another had a velveteen pouch with a stone in it. And they decided that they were hungry and they needed to stop, and so they created a fire. The one went to go get water to put in the pot, and the other put the stone in there. Now, all of the townspeople had locked up their doors and windows because they didn't know who these strangers were, and they barely had enough for themselves, so they, didn't want to have anything to do with these people. But then there was, an inquisitive kid who comes out to the three people and says, "What are you doing? You've got a stone in here and there's water." And they go, "Oh, we're making stone soup, the most wonderful soup there is." "How could it be wonderful? There's nothing but a stone in there." And they go, "Oh, you're right. Last time we had it had some carrots in it and sweetened the broth." And the kid goes, well, we have some carrots at my house. And the kid goes and runs off and gets the carrots. Well, then other townspeople start coming out, and they go, oh, yeah, the soup would be better with onions and a beef bone and da-da-da-da-da. And pretty soon, all these people were hoarding individually their tiny resource of potatoes or carrots or what have you. But together, collectively, with these strangers, they made this wonderful soup that all of them could enjoy from the spoils that really was their abundance. But they had been hoarding individually on their one thing because they were afraid of what they would have to do without. And that's the thing that's holding us from now in a resource-based economy, or this ideal that anyone has in their head, is the fear that they have in their mind that if they give of themselves, if they give of their time, if they give of their resources, there won't be enough for them when it comes their time of need. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to implement and show that's not true. You just have to line yourself with your people and people of the same ilk and people that are operating from the same mindset. And once you do, you'll be safe and cared for.
Mm. Yeah, and that is so much more than just a tasty soup, isn't it?
Absolutely, because now you know you can do that anytime after that, right?
Right. It's huge. I mean, that's the thing I keep coming back to with all of these kind of ideas for communities, for creating communities. It's everyone always talks about how we can share resources, and then we won't have to spend so much money, and then we won't have to work so hard. But I think the biggest fringe benefit that nobody looks at, because we it's so foreign to us, because we've lived these kind of isolated lives for so long, and that is just the friendship, the relationships that happen. And the things that come out of those relationships that we just don't have right now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, people have thousands of Facebook friends, mm-hmm. and they're completely lonely. Mm-hmm. And how many of those friends do they know that they can actually turn to? I can't tell you how many times that I've seen people end up homeless in my Facebook feed and asking for help, and people go, oh, well, I hope that works out for you. And, oh, that's so sad to hear. But they're not doing anything to help. And this is their actual friend. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'm just a person who friended them on Facebook. I don't know them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've gone and I've said, what do you need? What resources do you need? How bad is your situation? You know, there was someone that I personally knew that was in another state and ended up homeless because they were renting a room. Her and her partner were renting a room from somebody, and the person found out that her partner was trans, and they got kicked out. And I was on the phone with my lawyers to find out what the legality was regarding that issue. I was on the phone with shelters in her area, finding out who accepts trans people, because that, you know, is an issue for shelters. And sometimes they only have shelters that, you know, specialize serving the trans community. And I know that from my background growing up with my grandmother. My grandmother had a lot to do with the shelters in the suburbs outside of Chicago. So I knew a lot of this already from my background and life experience. And, you know, I found out from the police station what could be done about their possessions that were still in the house. So don't tell me with the advent of the internet that you're not capable of doing something for somebody just because they're in another state. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's look at history's gone by and how people did things for each other when the internet didn't even exist, mm-hmm. you know, and how travel was by oxen. They still sent people to help. Yeah. You know, it might have taken a while, but they did.
Yeah. But you've also created a resource here that I think if more people knew about, there's something that if they find someone who is in a situation like this, they can help to refer them to a place where they could actually get something, you know, some of their help that they need right away.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I mean, and that doesn't take anything, you know, to tell people.
Well, it takes people to put in their resources, right? Mm-hmm. So if you expect people to have resources, you need to put in resources. Because maybe maybe you don't have, it's just like the story of stone soup. There is no soup unless you put in your potatoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in Tennessee, it's important that you put in all these places for free Wi-Fi. We have a page on the website for free Wi-Fi because to some of our supporters, that's just as necessary as having food, water, and shelter, right?
Uh-huh.
So maybe maybe people within your network don't need to know where those resources are because they're already familiar with them. But maybe there's somebody traveling, because we have lots of people who travel and have RVs and go visit other intentional communities and other groups. Maybe they need to know where those resources are when they pull in through town.
Yeah.
So just because you don't need it and your friends don't need it doesn't mean that you can't put it in for other people within our network to use it.
Well,
and maybe you're referring people to join our website, and you don't think those people will necessarily be of any help, but maybe they will be to someone who doesn't have anybody in that region or that country or that area.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of ways that you can really help. You're providing a lot of ways that individuals can help, and what some of these examples you're giving here are not even money. It's not money. It's just information that you're sharing, and that could really help people.
Mm-hmm.
So wonderful. And I'm going to keep that in my back pocket, and I'm definitely I'm going to go back in your website and look around and see where I can contribute, hopefully. But it sounds like generally you want to put people together who are interested in a resource-based economy, but you also sounds like you want to just help people who are kind of at the fringes of a system that is really kind of failing them.
Mm-hmm.
So is that correct, or is there more to the objectives, the specific objectives that you guys have?
Well, I mean, our objective is to make the fringe, what's identified now as being fringe society, to be mainstream, and mainstream to be fringe society. Because, right, we're probably not going to convince all 7 billion people that this is the way. But you don't need to create a movement and to change society as a whole, right? We saw that demonstrated here in the U.S. with gays being able to marry. Mm-hmm. It only took 10% of people who were in support of it to really change the mindset and to make the tides change. So we only need 10% of the Earth's population to get on board with this kind of concept in order for this to become mainstream. And if people don't want to be part of it, that's cool. But they're going to really be hurting themselves, because they're going to end up having to, if they're meat eaters, kill their own meat. They're going to have to grow their own vegetables. And, I have a feeling that a lot of those people that are going to become the new fringe aren't going to really get along well with each other, and might have a situation, Darwin's theory played out, of where people just end up dealing with things in a really aberrant, horrible way. Yeah. But that's their choice. You can choose whether to opt in or opt out, and no one's holding you back. You're really benefiting yourself by being cooperative. Yeah. And so to get back to your question about objectives, we do have objectives, right? Because we wouldn't be able to know whether or not we're being a success by our standards if we didn't. And so our objectives are to get people registered as volunteers and participating and helping us build the website, because we have a small team and we can only do so much. There's 24 hours in a day, and there's so much that needs to be done. We have our own personal lives too. I've bills to pay. I have to make sure they get paid on time. I need to buy groceries to make sure I eat. We also want to register all the seed teams and bud teams, and those are individuals that form a group. A seed team is 1 to 4 people. A seed is basically a bud in training. A bud is 5 to 15 people. We found that those are the most effective sizes of groups. And those groups can be part of larger groups, but the larger group might be serving a big overall purpose, and the specific buds might serve individual purposes. For instance, there could be a large collective group of people putting on a festival, and one bud might operate handling the whole parking situation of figuring out where all these people are going to park for the festival, who's going to run it, show people where to park individually. Then there might be another group that specializes in medical care for emergency situations and, triage and people having emotional breakdown, depending on what the festival is about. So each bud serves its own purpose within the huge group. And then also we want to keep track of who are being financial contributors. We do ask people if they can and their budget allows to give $5 a month, or some people just donate from time to time. And those monies are used in a really responsible way that's the most effective to serve the purpose of everybody using the site, right? It keeps the site up and running. We also intend to, we're not at a point where we can now, have enough money coming in where we can then start giving that money to people working on projects. So maybe you have an intentional community and you'd really like to install solar panels so you guys can get off of mainstream, electric and power your own community. That would be something that we're interested in supporting. And so we're working on developing our own in-house crowdfunding platform. So, because a lot of people right now do it on different platforms and they have to pay all these fees and everything. And we want to assume that responsibility where you guys don't have to do that because you can have more money be put into your actual project. And so we'd ask people to raise half of what they need by drawing people to our website and having them contribute. And then once they meet that halfway point, we match them with that $5 a month we've been accumulating from everyone else, just to make sure that we're fiscally conservative and we can help as many people as possible, but also to know that the people asking for money are very serious about the project that they're working on and they're willing to put in that sweat equity to do that thing that they want. And not only do you, get the money and then that's it, we never see you again. Like, we expect to get information from you, whether it's a video of you installing those solar panels, or maybe you do a how-to for our website on how to install solar panels. So now it becomes cyclical and reciprocal as an organization. You get, you give. Mm-hmm. You give, you get.
Brilliant. And again, I think that requiring that is so beneficial, not just for your organization, but for the people that are giving, just giving, because it doesn't always have to be about money. You can give your time, you can give your information, you can share your resources a little bit. It's wonderful to have a place where you can do that. So is that, you mentioned this crowdfunding idea, which I think is a great idea. Are there any other projects that are going on for you guys now that you're working on?
Well, that's kind of a funny question because the transition team's main objective is to maintain the website and do whatever serves the people using it, the most active users. So we have the suggestion box and we're constantly discussing those items and working on them and assigning them to whoever specializes in the skill set that can address that issue. But again, the transition is just like the pot of our stone soup, right? The projects going on are the people that participate on the site. So we have people doing all types of things. We have people like working on inventions for free energy. We have people wanting to start intentional communities. We have people that are working on starting community gardens and food forests. We have other people that just are interested in having weekly potlucks. Still more people want to do like monthly documentary screenings so they can inform their local community. So there's people working on all types of projects. And so we're plugging them into the resources they need to be more effective at doing those things and giving them a calendar so they can add that information so everyone else is well informed.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I'm sure making sure that they're not duplicating the efforts of other people. Have you heard any stories of people that had been working on a project or something and then they came to your site and realized there were other folks that were doing the same thing and then they just joined forces and got stronger?
Well, I mean, that kind of happened when we were still operating out of the hybrid group. Mm-hmm. But now we're kind of in this weird transitional stage because we just launched the site a few months ago and we're still trying to migrate everybody from Facebook.
Okay.
So it's not everybody is as active as we would like to see so far because they're still catching wind that the site is even up. because not everybody checks their Facebook every day. We've tried to private message people and let them know if they didn't see the announcement on the Facebook group or whatever. We're partnering with other groups that also have Facebook groups, and so they're trying to move their people over there too. So that's something that we've learned is through the website being up as little as it has been, is that there's a lot of groups and organizations that are using us as kind of a filter to find out the serious people from the not serious people. If you're serious in getting involved with our organization, we expect you to be at phase 2, within this amount of time. Or if you don't even start the action plan, we don't want you to join our organization because it demonstrates to us that you don't have a stick-with-itness. So that's something that was unexpected that we're seeing be developed. Yeah,
that's a big deal to have a filter like that. Because lots of people have interests in things, but to actually have the time, the energy, and the passion to just start doing it, to create their own action plan right now, that's different. You do meet out some people, I'm sure.
And then I've also seen on my own Facebook feed of one of our contributors, he was talking about his project and what he intends to do, and somebody goes, "Man, I want to be part of your bud." And he goes, "Not until you're at phase 2.
Speaking of those people that are looking to actually do something and not just talk about it, if they were to come to your website, how can they best benefit from it? Walk us through how they should get involved.
Sure. Well, they benefit by becoming an active participant on the site and using the Your Action Plan. So if you don't look at anything else on the website but go to the Your Action Plan page, that's the most important place to be, because first of all, it gives you the most important information that you need to really get started, but also it kind of acts as a guided tour of the website and starts to introduce you to other parts of the website as you progress and move along. Because the website has well over 180 pages and continues to grow as we learn the needs of those that use the site. So we don't want people to be overwhelmed, and we learned early on that people get overwhelmed with too much information. So by working that action plan, you start to learn more about the transition as a whole and how you fit in. You have a review session after every phase with your point person who gets more of a pulse of what you're doing and how we can best assist you. And then there's also a page that's called How Does This Impact Me? And it outlines point for point on that action plan, how that impacts you directly by you doing it. Because some people are like, why do I have to do this thing? This is your thing. This is your organization's thing. This has nothing to do with me. Actually, it has everything to do with you. It was developed for you. And this is how it serves you. And so that page explains that. And then through using the site, they'll have access to individuals with skill sets that they themselves do not have but need for their projects. So maybe you need a carpenter, maybe you need someone who can do electrical or an engineer. You'll be able to find those people, and they register their skills. You'll be able to get tons of training to help, work on whatever you're working on and be more effective and strengthen the skills that you already have, that you already identify as being your strengths. You'll be able to find like-minded folks near you, have access to directories where you can find free Wi-Fi, spaces to use, whether it's a garage, an extra room, a couch, RV hookup, for your traveling RV, places for you to live, objects to borrow or own. You can learn where other bud groups are and what they're specifically working on and what their focus is. So maybe you can merge or work together more closely. And we're constantly doing research and development to provide the latest and best information to everyone who uses the site. So maybe, you personally at some point are on phase 3 and we learned something through interviewing someone that we go, damn, this would have been really good had everyone learned this in phase 0. We'll actually add it to phase 0, and the website will kick every single person back to phase 0 to go and do that thing. And then once they do it, they'll be able to go back to where they left off. But that's so nobody gets left behind. Everybody has the same base level of education under their belt, and we're all on the same page, literally and figuratively.
Wow. Gosh, it seems like you guys have really put a lot of thought into this. I expect it's probably from your perspective that your input has to do with your background and dealing with the Venus Project and all of that. Because I always come up with every time I've been involved with organizations, there's there's such a danger for people to get wrapped up in a lot of politics and ego and drama that just ends up killing what they had set out to do in the first place. And so it sounds like you guys have kind of addressed that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, we even have stuff on the action plan to help people work through that. We have it's a rather long YouTube video of a seminar on nonviolent communication, and everyone gets kind of scared because it's 3 hours and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to watch that. But people tend to break it up into tiny pieces, watch 20 minutes or so every day until they do it. And everyone who has gone through, that phase and watched that video has said it's one of the best things I've ever done with that amount of time. And it's changed how I interact and talk to people, both within my family and people I interact with on a daily basis. And so little by little, I feel the phases kind of unpack all this BS that we've acquired from just living in the world that we do, because there's so many influences we've had from inception. We've had our parents' influence, we've had our school teachers' influence, we've had our bosses, we've had, politicians, we've had all these people telling us who and what to think and how to act. And now's the time to unpack it and find out, why do we operate this way, and really question it. Because I feel individually we don't do that enough, and collectively as a society, as a human race, we don't. I mean, Michael's talked about it during his interview about, money. When was the last time we collectively as a human race said, hey, this money thing, is this still working out for us, or should we maybe try something else? Yeah.
No, I think I always go back to this. I think 10 years ago, probably, for me anyway, I just knew, I could smell there was something wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. The thing is this, we're never exposed to any alternatives, and that's the issue, because we're so immersed. It's like the fish swimming in the water, not knowing that it's water that they're swimming in. And I think we're getting now to the point where we are starting to go, this smells so funny, and now other people are coming up, well, wait a minute, here's an idea. That's kind of why we have the podcast, so that we can show people that there's other alternatives. There is water here. This thing that we're swimming in doesn't have to be. We could have something else. So yeah, totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of, throughout my life, I see these little points where things, I was starting to question, this doesn't make sense. I grew up in a single parent household with my mother and my grandmother, and the two of them, I mean, there were times where they were both working 2 and 3 jobs to support our family. And they work 8 hours. You're supposed to sleep 8 hours. That's 16 hours out of a 24-hour day. Then you have to do errands, pay the bills, go grocery shopping, whatever. Mm-hmm. How do you have any time to actually spend with your family? And I was like, they're both working 2, possibly 3 jobs, and we still have 1-ply toilet paper. Meanwhile, I go over to my friend's house and play, and they have 2-ply toilet paper, but they have 2 parents, and they each only work 1 job. How does that work out? Like, how do we still have 1-ply? And this is like an 8-year-old me thinking this, But it just doesn't make sense, where people can work so hard and still not have their basic needs met, Mm-hmm. And you see articles and different things go through Facebook or even in the newspaper of, a mom that takes the bus to work and is losing out 3 hours or more of her life having to do all the transfers that she needs to do just to get to work. Mm-hmm. That's 3 hours she doesn't have with her kids. Mm-hmm. And then we wonder why we have gangs and street violence and kids breaking into stores.
Yep. You hit the nail on the head. The system doesn't really support the things that we're talking about here, which is community, which is sharing, which is all these things that we're talking about are really bad for the economy. And for too long, we've thought of the economy as a god that must be sacrificed to, otherwise we will all perish in some everlasting pit. And I think we're starting to realize that we're living in the everlasting pit right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Nicole. I really appreciate you coming on here. Again, could you tell people what's the name of the website, how they can get there?
The website is thetransition.org.
Okay.
And off of the landing page, the homepage, there's a big yellow button that'll take you to your action plan, which is the most important page on the website. And just get plugging away at doing those tasks. And by the time you get to the end of phase 0, you'll set up an appointment with your point person, and you'll have a literal, real person talking to you about what you're working on and what you're most passionate about. And they'll be able to help, figure out how to best serve you and your particular needs. And the more active you are in the website and with the organization as a whole, the easier it is for us to meet your individual needs and work on things that contribute to you being a success, both in your personal life and, your activist life or whatever you're working on.
And this doesn't cost anything, right? Though you do say you really encourage and want people to contribute, correct? It doesn't have to be money, though.
Correct. There are currently 4 phases on the website. All of those you have access to for free. There are portions of the site that are blocked off for contributors only, and that's more of the how-to type information. So that's information that people have submitted on how to do specific things. We don't have this currently, but as an example, say you wanted to learn how to create a composting toilet outside. Someone could submit that information. We would have that on the website under a certain category, and you'd have access to it if you were a contributor with, step-by-step on how to go about that process. And there's other material in the contributor-only portion. The thing is, by not being a contributor, you're losing out, because you yourself will then not be able to get funding or support for your project should you want it. Mm-hmm. So by being a contributor, you're automatically allowed to then request money for your project once we have enough, accumulated to be able to do that sustainably, which we're just a brand new site, so we're not there yet. But it's all about the stone soup mentality of you only get out, as much or more than you put in. Mm-hmm. So the more you give, the more abundance you're going to be able to have access to.
Well put. Thank you so much for that. And I do hope that maybe you'll come back and share updates about what's going on with the transition in the future, Nicole. This has really been a fascinating discussion, and I think one that a lot of people are going to benefit from.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to come back on. I didn't even get to talk to you about the conference we go to every year that's really great and our supporters have been coming to.
Oh, well, go ahead. If you want to share that, go ahead.
Sure. So one of our biggest inspirations that both the people individually and the intentional community as a whole that has inspired us is Twin Oaks community in Louisa, Virginia. And they're one of the oldest intentional communities in the U.S. They were established in 1967. They're typically around 100 people. They're a little under cap right now. And those people range from babies to elders. They have 400 acres of land. They even have their own cemetery for when their members do pass away. They have a hospice program for end of life. That community as a whole owns 6 community-owned businesses. Nobody has an outside job unless they want one. They all get kind of like an allowance every month from those businesses for their own personal vices because all their needs are provided for. They have a fleet of vehicles that they share, over 25, I think, that range from hybrid vehicles to 18-passenger vans, pickup trucks. And they hold a conference every year, a communities conference. And we've been going since 2013 as an organization. And just the last 2 years, our supporters and contributors have been showing up, and it's been amazing. And it's one of the best things that we as an organization spend money on to go, because we meet tons of like-minded people. We get lots of experts that are featured in our Who FAQ section of the website. They then give us material to put on the website. So it's one of the best things we spend money on. It's a life-changing experience. I've had a lot of aha moments being at the conference. I feel very nourished when I'm there, and it becomes starkly obvious how much better life could be when you leave there and you come back to quote-unquote reality. And it's just, you see the insanity that we live in from a clearer perspective, and how much better things could be. That they're not perfect. It's not utopia, and they even say that themselves. But they've got a pretty good view sitting from there.
Wow. And how that's been going on since the 60s, you said?
Yeah, the 60s. And it's actually helped facilitate the creation of other communities. There's a nearby community called Acorn Community, which has similar values but is slightly different. And then there's another one in Missouri called Eastwind Community. And then thousands of people over those years have visited from other countries and other states and been inspired to start their own as well. So yeah.
And what's the name of the conference?
The Twin Oaks Communities Conference.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and they can get a discount code if they register with the transition each year. So the more involved you are with the transition, the more benefits you get.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great to know. Okay, well, I definitely want to go back and look at your website and hopefully get more involved there. And I want to thank you again, Nicole. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast today. We will see you next week. Thanks for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast. For more sustainable living tips, join our Facebook group, Sustainable Living Tips, Tools, and Tactics, and follow us on Twitter.